The first time I saw her hovering near my side yard with a clipboard and a fake smile, I just thought she was nosy. But I should have known better. People like Darlene from the HOA don't just hover. They target. I'm Nolan Burke. I bought my place 2 years ago, a single-story ranch with a solid yard and a ton of potential. I'd been fixing it up after work, mostly plumbing and landscaping on weekends. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. And apparently that was enough to make me public enemy #1 to the HOA queen herself. Darlene Marwick, mid-50s, bleach blonde bob, permanent scowl, and president of the Oak Ridge Meadows HOA. She'd knock on my door at least once a week with some made-up violation. "Mr. Burke," she'd say, dragging out my name like it offended her. "Your hose is coiled the wrong way. That's a tripping hazard." Or, "The shade of lavender your wife planted is not on the approved color palette." I'm not married, by the way. That one was wild. But I kept things polite. I'd nod, say I'd look into it, then go back to replacing my kitchen sink or installing new gutters. I didn't give her the fight she clearly wanted. Then one morning, I woke up to the sound of water running, and not from inside the house. I rushed outside and found a pool forming in my front yard. My main water line had burst. I shut off the valve and called a plumber. He showed up, dug a few feet down, and then looked at me with this raised eyebrow. "You said this was an old pipe?" he asked. "Yeah, why?" I asked, kneeling beside him. He held up the broken piece. This wasn't age. Someone hit it with something sharp. Repeatedly. I felt the heat rise to my face. That pipe was buried under a foot of dirt. No way this was an accident. I checked my security camera, which at the time only faced the front porch. Nothing. But then I remembered my neighbor, Gary, had a camera that covered part of my yard from his upstairs window. I asked him if I could take a look at his footage from the night before. He shrugged and handed me his laptop without asking a single question. He hated the HOA even more than I did. I fast-forwarded to around midnight, and there she was, Darlene. In a hoodie that did nothing to hide her platinum hair, hunched over my yard near the side of the house. She had something in her hand, could have been a crowbar, maybe a wrench, whatever it was. She went to town on the ground and then walked off like she'd just taken out the trash. I stared at the screen for a full minute. She sabotaged my pipes. I wasn't mad. I was done being mad. I was ready. So I went to Lowe's, bought 3 more security cameras, and installed them around my entire property, one facing the side yard, one toward the back, and one hidden in a birdhouse near the driveway. I wasn't just going to catch her next time. I was going to bury her. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared, because I was calculating. I'd been through enough in my life to know when someone had crossed the line from nuisance to criminal. And Darlene Marwick had crossed it in steel-toed heels. The next morning, I took Gary's footage, backed it up in 3 places, and drove straight to the county sheriff's office. I wasn't interested in filing a complaint with the HOA. That was like reporting a fox to the henhouse. I wanted this on public record. The deputy on duty, a guy named Harris, watched the clip twice before muttering, "Well, she's not exactly subtle." I leaned forward. This wasn't vandalism. That pipe ran to my irrigation system. She knew what she was doing. He nodded slowly. "You'll want to file a formal report. And if you've got cameras now, keep them rolling. If she comes back, we'll want more than one incident." I left with a case number, a copy of the report, and the deputy's assurance that they'd be in touch. It wasn't instant gratification, but it was movement. I liked movement. That weekend, I laid low. Not literally. I was on a ladder most of Saturday installing a motion sensor light above the side gate, but I didn't engage. I didn't respond to the HOA's usual bulk emails. I didn't wave at neighbors. I was observing. And then Tuesday night, just before midnight, the motion sensor light snapped on. The birdhouse cam caught everything. Darlene, same hoodie, same hunched posture, creeping along the edge of my property. This time, she had a measuring tape and a clipboard. She was photographing my fence and scribbling notes like she was on safari. She never noticed the lens sitting 2 feet from her nose. I pulled the footage the next morning and emailed it straight to Deputy Harris. Less than an hour later, he called. "She's not just trespassing," he said. She's documenting it like a job site. That's premeditated. We're elevating the charge to attempted property tampering. I felt something shift. It wasn't relief. It was confirmation. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. Not Darlene this time. It was Tom Wexler, the HOA's vice president. A balding man in golf attire who'd never once spoken to me without looking at his watch. "You got 5 minutes?" he asked, not waiting for an answer as he stepped onto my porch. I blocked the doorway. "What's this about?" He exhaled through his nose like I'd already disappointed him. "Look, Nolan, I don't know what you think you've caught on tape, but Darlene's been with this HOA for 12 years. She's meticulous. She doesn't make mistakes." "Sure she does," I said. "She made one Tuesday night and another last week." His jaw twitched. "What do you want?" "I want her off my property. Permanently. And I want the HOA to stop fabricating violations to cover her tracks." "We don't fabricate anything." I held up my phone. "You want to see her with a crowbar? Or should I save that for the court date?" He didn't respond right away. Just stared at me like he was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. "I'll talk to the board," he said eventually. I closed the door. That weekend I got a certified letter. Thought it might be an apology. Instead, it was a formal notice of a fine $300 for unapproved surveillance infrastructure. They were fining me for security cameras. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the envelope. I copied the letter, added it to my growing file, and called my cousin Brooke. She's a real estate attorney who specializes in HOA disputes. I hadn't wanted to involve her before, but now it was getting personal. She drove over Sunday afternoon, reviewed everything, and whistled when she saw the footage. "They're cooked," she said. "This goes beyond civil. You've got criminal trespass, malicious property damage, and now they're retaliating with false fines. This is textbook abuse of authority." I asked what my options were. "Lawsuit," she said. "We go after them for damages. Emotional distress. Retaliation. You'll win, but it'll take months. Or, we go nuclear." She laid out the plan. Monday morning, I filed an emergency petition with the county court to request a temporary restraining order against Darlene. Brooke helped me word the affidavit so every accusation was backed by timestamped footage, HOA communications, and the police report. The judge approved it in less than 24 hours. By Wednesday, Darlene was served. The deputy handed it to her in front of her house while she was pruning some poor azalea into a cube. I watched from across the street as her face drained of color. She looked up, saw me, and for the first time didn't say a word. That same day, Brooke filed a formal complaint with the state's Department of Consumer Affairs on my behalf. She documented everything: the trespassing, the sabotage, the retaliatory fines, and requested an investigation into the HOA's conduct. 2 weeks later, the county prosecutor contacted me directly. The sheriff's office had forwarded both sets of footage, and the DA wanted to press criminal charges. Not just against Darlene, but also against the HOA for enabling her conduct. The case gained traction fast. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd been targeted. 3 other homeowners came forward once they heard the news. One had been fined for trimming a tree that was technically on their own property. Another had paid for a mandatory gutter replacement that never happened. A third had footage of Darlene standing on his porch, snapping pictures through the window. By April, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. This time, it wasn't held at the clubhouse. It was at the county courthouse. Their lawyer tried to settle, offered me $5,000 and a written apology. Brooke laughed him out of the room. "We're not here for $5,000, she said. "We're here to dismantle a pattern of abuse." The trial date was set for June. In the meantime, the restraining order stayed in place. Darlene was prohibited from setting foot on my property, communicating with me, or issuing any HOA decisions involving my address. Her name was scrubbed off all HOA correspondence related to my home. That didn't stop her from trying to get around it. One afternoon, I caught her husband, Gerald, loitering near my driveway with a tape measure. I stepped outside and asked if he was lost. He mumbled something about checking easements, then waddled off like someone had lit a fire under him. I added the footage to the file. Brooke forwarded it to the DA. By late May, the HOA caved. They called a vote to remove Darlene as president. She lost in a landslide. Only 2 votes in her favor, hers and Gerald's. The new board president, a retired firefighter named Ellen Vargas, called me personally the next day. "I've seen the files," she said. "I'm sorry it ever got this far. We're offering a full settlement. $35,000. All prior fines rescinded. No future action unless there's clear cause. And Darlene's barred from board participation indefinitely." I didn't respond right away. She added, "She'll also be issuing a written admission of wrongdoing. And we've agreed to cooperate fully with the state investigation." I accepted. 2 weeks later, I got the check in the mail, along with a notarized letter signed by Darlene admitting to unauthorized entry and intentional property damage. I framed it. It hangs above my newly installed irrigation system, just to the left of my front window. And if you ever visit Oak Ridge Meadows, look for the house with the cameras, the motion lights, and the birdhouse that hums quietly when you walk past. That's me. Quiet homeowner. Former target. Now the reason Darlene Marwick's name is synonymous with disgrace. The settlement money was nice, sure. But it wasn't about the money anymore. Not after what came next. See, when Darlene was ousted from the board, her name stopped appearing on official correspondence. But her influence didn't vanish. It just went underground. And the first sign of that was a cryptic notice posted to the community bulletin board near the pool, folded and stapled crookedly like someone didn't want it to be seen, but needed it to be found. It read, "Special audit pending, HOA records under review. All residents advised to secure personal documentation." It wasn't signed. No logo. No header. Just those words typed in bold and a phone number I didn't recognize. I wasn't the only one who saw it. Later that evening, I was out front replacing a cracked garden light when Ellen walked up, her jaw tight. "Did you see the notice?" she asked. I nodded. "Who put it up?" "No idea, but I called the number. It belongs to a paralegal with the state attorney general's office. That got my attention." "Wait," I said, standing. "You're saying they've opened an investigation?" She nodded. "Looks that way. And if that's true, the earlier complaints we filed, they're probably cross-referencing them now." She glanced up the street, then leaned in closer. "Listen, Nolan, I don't want to alarm you, but I got a call this morning from a former treasurer. He said someone from the old board withdrew nearly $30,000 in community improvement funds last year, and there's no record of what it was spent on." I didn't say anything, not because I was surprised, but because I was calculating again. 2 days later, a plain white van pulled into the clubhouse lot. 2 men in business casual clothes stepped out, flashed badges to the maintenance guy, and started hauling boxes from the back room. Nobody said anything, but word spread fast. That's when the real unraveling began. Emails started circulating. Old board members suddenly remembered meetings that had never been logged. Receipts surfaced, some handwritten, others suspiciously identical. One resident, a retired accountant named Linda, compiled a spreadsheet that showed nearly $50,000 in expenses filed under landscaping assessments that never reflected any work being done. I forwarded her findings to Brooke, who passed them to the state investigators. Less than 48 hours later, subpoenas were issued. The HOA's former secretary, a nervous man named Calvin, who once fined someone for leaving their recycling bin out past noon, cracked first. He agreed to a deposition in exchange for leniency. According to Brooke, he provided access to a shared drive where Darlene and 2 other former board members had kept encrypted folders labeled with vague titles like Community Compliance and Seasonal Operations. One folder, however, was more direct, Mitigations Burke. Brooke called me the moment she saw it. "There's a file with your name on it," she said. "And it's not friendly." The contents were worse than expected. Meeting notes described strategic enforcement targeting my property. A scanned map had circles drawn around my yard with annotations like pipe access and fence leverage point. One note, dated weeks before the sabotage, read, "If he won't comply, force a violation." I forwarded the entire folder to Deputy Harris, who had been following the case since the beginning. Within a week, the county DA filed additional charges against Darlene: conspiracy to commit vandalism, misuse of public funds, and falsifying HOA records. But the most damning piece? A voice memo. It was buried in a folder labeled Meetings Internal, and it was clearly recorded without the participants' knowledge. The audio crackled, but the voices were unmistakable. "Darlene, we can't wait for another vote. If Nolan won't play ball, we make it impossible for him to stay. Gerald, what if he calls the police? Darlene, then we bury it in paperwork. He'll get tired eventually." That recording changed everything. Because now the charges weren't just property damage or financial misconduct. They had intent. They had conspiracy. And they had motive. The county prosecutor filed a motion to consolidate the charges into a single case. Grand jury proceedings began the following month. In the meantime, the neighborhood turned. People who had once looked the other way, who had been silent during the years of aggressive enforcement, started stepping forward. Homeowners brought photos of repairs they'd been billed for that never occurred. One woman produced a letter Darlene had written warning she'd be blacklisted from community events if she didn't repaint her mailbox. I was asked to testify. Brooke prepped me for half a day: what to expect, how to present the evidence, when to pause. The courtroom was cool and sterile, but the tension inside was anything but. Darlene sat at a table with her attorney, her expression unreadable. She wore a charcoal blazer and a pin shaped like an eagle, clearly trying to project authority. I didn't look at her once. Instead, I answered every question with precision. I described the night of the sabotage, the discovery of the footage, the meeting with Tom Wexler, the retaliatory fine. I presented the voice memo, the file folder, the annotated map. Every time the prosecutor played a clip or displayed a document, the jury leaned in a little further. By the end of my testimony, even the defense attorney looked rattled. 2 weeks later, the grand jury indicted Darlene and Gerald on 5 counts, including criminal conspiracy and embezzlement of community funds. The former treasurer and secretary received immunity deals in exchange for their testimony. The HOA was placed under state oversight pending a full audit. Ellen, to her credit, didn't flinch. She cooperated fully, opened the books, and kept the community in the loop with weekly updates. Under her leadership, the HOA was stripped of disciplinary powers pending restructuring, and a third-party administrator was brought in to mediate disputes. It wasn't over, but it was stabilized. As for me, I didn't throw a party. I didn't make a scene. I just went back to my projects, added a pergola to the back patio, installed a new drought-resistant garden, and started writing a guide for homeowners dealing with hostile HOAs. One afternoon, as I was staining the new bench by the fence, Gary wandered over with a beer and handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Neighborhood petition. We're nominating you for the new oversight committee. Figured you've earned it." I opened it. Nearly every signature on the street was there. I didn't answer right away. Just sat there, staring at the ink on the page, thinking about everything that had happened, every dark corner exposed, every lie dragged into the light. I nodded once. "All right," I said. "Let's clean house." The first official meeting of the new HOA Oversight Committee was held in the back room of the local library, neutral ground, away from the clubhouse and its lingering stench of bad decisions and worse coffee. The room was small, windowless, and lit by overhead fluorescents that buzzed just enough to irritate. But it was quiet. And it was ours. Ellen sat at the head of the table wearing her standard navy utility jacket and a pair of reading glasses that made her look like she had X-ray vision. To her right was Linda, the retired accountant who had blown the whistle on the missing landscaping funds. Across from her was a contractor named Miguel who had once been falsely accused of violating noise ordinances for using a power drill before noon. And next to me sat Tara, a high school civics teacher with a folder full of annotated HOA bylaws and a vendetta longer than the meeting agenda. No one spoke until Ellen cleared her throat. "We start fresh," she said, opening a manila folder. "But we don't forget." Linda pushed her glasses up. "You've all seen the internal memos. What we're dealing with goes beyond mismanagement. Tara tapped her pen against her legal pad. Some of those assessments were rerouted through shell invoices. That's premeditated fraud. Miguel leaned forward, arms crossed. And the paving contract from last spring? The one we all paid for? I checked the license number. That company never existed. I glanced at the packet in front of me. It was a thick stack: ledgers, emails, scanned receipts. At the back was a breakdown of bank withdrawals that didn't match any recorded projects. Some entries were simply listed as community outreach, but no one could recall a single event. Ellen turned to me. You've got law enforcement contacts. Think we've got enough to escalate? I already did, I said. Gave everything to Deputy Harris last week. He forwarded it to the white-collar crimes division at the DA's office. They're opening a broader probe. Tara blinked. Wait, this is going criminal? Full scale, I said. They're calling it a pattern of racketeering. The HOA collected over $120,000 in discretionary fees during Darlene's last 3 years. Less than half can be accounted for. Miguel shook his head slowly. And we all just paid it. No questions asked. Linda grunted. We asked. They threatened us with liens. Ellen closed the folder and looked around the table. Then we make this public. Town hall meeting. We show everyone what was taken, who authorized it, and what's being done about it. Tara raised an eyebrow. You sure that won't panic the neighborhood? Good, Ellen said. Let them panic. They paid for this mess. They deserve to know who dragged them into it. The meeting was set for the following Thursday, held in the gymnasium of the elementary school down the road. It was the only place big enough to hold what we expected to be a crowd, and we were right. By the time the presentation started, every folding chair was filled and residents lined the walls with arms crossed and eyes narrowed. I took the podium first, not as a victim but as a witness. Many of you know what happened at my property, I began. But what you may not know is that it wasn't an isolated incident. What we're uncovering is a coordinated effort to weaponize HOA authority for personal gain. I clicked the remote and the projector displayed the first slide, a financial chart with color-coded withdrawals, each one labeled by date and category. We've traced over 60 entries listed as improvements. But there are no work orders, no invoices, no permits. Linda took over next. She walked the audience through the numbers, showing how consistent amounts were withdrawn at the end of each quarter just before budget reports were due. Tara followed, explaining how the board had rewritten enforcement rules in private, then used those changes to issue fines that funneled money back into the same slush accounts. Then Ellen stood. She didn't use notes. She didn't need them. Some of you were told that your fences were too tall, that your paint color was outdated, that your mailbox was 2 inches too far from the curb. You were fined, threatened, harassed. That money, it didn't fix sidewalks. It didn't plant trees. It went into private accounts to fund what we now know were fraudulent contracts and personal expenses. A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone in the back called out, "How much did they take?" Ellen didn't flinch. Our estimate is over $90,000 in unaccounted funds. We expect that number to rise. Gasps rippled through the room. An older woman near the front stood up. My husband paid $300 for a roof inspection we never received. He had cancer. We couldn't afford that. Miguel stepped forward. You'll get it back. That's why we're here? The town hall didn't end so much as unravel. People shouted. Some cried. A few walked out in stunned silence, but no one left without knowing the truth. The next morning, a warrant was executed at Darlene and Gerald's house. I didn't know it was happening at first. I was trimming the new hedges along my driveway when a pair of unmarked cruisers rolled by and turned down their cul-de-sac. 10 minutes later, a police SUV followed. Then a van with a county seal on the side. Gary strolled over, hands in his jacket pockets, and nodded toward the commotion. They're taking boxes out the front door, he said. Laptops, phones, even pulled the router. I didn't say anything, just kept clipping one stem at a time. Later, I learned they'd recovered financial ledgers stored on a USB drive, hidden in a drawer beneath a fake bottom. The files included personal expenditures paid with HOA funds, spa treatments, luxury handbags, even a stay at a coastal resort booked under Ellen's predecessor's name. The charges escalated quickly. Darlene and Gerald were formally indicted on 7 felony counts, including wire fraud, embezzlement, and criminal conspiracy. 2 additional former board members were charged with aiding and abetting. The judge denied bail, citing a risk of document tampering. The neighborhood changed after that. The HOA was dissolved and restructured under third-party management, with a rotating advisory board elected by residents. Fines and assessments were frozen pending review. Every homeowner received a rebate check for overpaid dues from the last 3 years, funded through a court-ordered liquidation of the Marwick's assets. Darlene's house was seized and sold. The proceeds went toward the restitution fund. She now awaits trial in a county detention facility where she's reportedly filed multiple complaints about the quality of the fluorescent lighting. As for me, I stepped down from the oversight committee once the restitution process was complete. I didn't want to become part of the system I helped dismantle. I just wanted peace. Gary helped me build a new fence, this one with reinforced panels and a steel-reinforced gate. Not because I thought anyone would try again, but because it felt symbolic, one last boundary, solid and unshakable. One afternoon, I was sitting under the pergola when Tara stopped by with a small envelope. Inside was a certificate of appreciation from the County Board of Supervisors thanking me for my civic contribution to restoring ethical governance. I laughed, then pinned it to the wall of my shed right next to the framed confession Darlene had once signed. The garden's blooming now. The irrigation system runs on a timer and the motion lights haven't triggered in weeks. No more clipboard patrols. No more surveillance disguised as inspections. Just neighbors, fences, and the quiet hum of a community finally breathing again. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't swift. But it was thorough. And it was ours.